Yo guys, Vision SGN here, bringing you Marvel Rivals Best Competitive Lineup Part 3, where we'll be breaking down the third best lineup in the game to be using right now to counter the number one lineup in the game, which I've made a separate video on my channel previously and explains the full lineup and why. Now this video will aim to use different characters that are not used in the previous two lineups on my video, and I'll explain how to use all of these 6 heroes in this video based on both their roles and their abilities, but also what adjustments you want to make, explaining when you make them and why. On that note, let's get right into it. Now, as for this lineup, I won't be going over a guide as such on all of their abilities and how to use them, as I'll be making separate videos on my channel for all of these characters, but for the most part, I'm assuming anyone that's watching this video and learning about the latest comp lineups following the latest Season 1.5 update is fully aware of most of the heroes, so here are the roles and responsibilities of each of the following heroes. So as usual, we'll start with the tanks, and this lineup will have a 2-2-2 setup, which in my opinion is the most versatile and well-balanced lineup that you can have, and for anyone new, that means having 2 duelists, 2 strategists, and 2 vanguards. So for number 1 on this lineup, you'll want someone responsible for damage mitigation, great at shielding, and also dealing backline damage. As Magneto is one of the best in the game at doing this, he will definitely be the number 1 option on this team, as he deals great area of effect damage to all sorts of players, as you'll see in this video, where he can deal great damage using his ult, as well as his team up. As for number 2 on this list, you'll want to use Captain America, as he'll be your diving and brawling style counterpart as a second tank setup, as he's so good at delaying and interrupting those backline heals, as well as getting in their faces and stopping them from being effective or earning their ultimates as fast. And then it allows Magneto to deal a lot of damage, especially area of effect damage, and then Scarlet Witch, who will be number 3 on this team and the primary damage dealer, as she'll be the executioner for the team, someone with the highest final hits or team cleanups, and someone who works well with Magneto due to her team up ability. Now, as for the 4th spot and your secondary duelist, you'll want to use Punisher, someone that is really good from range, someone with a good hybrid versatility at close range when needed to back up his supports, but also someone who can destroy Doctor Strange's shield. Now, this is the key part, because when you're breaking down the number 1 lineup, you've got to start from the front and work your way to the back, unless you're going to have a dive heavy team, which this one does not. And Punisher is just perfect for this, as he can set up with his turret and deal an insane amount of damage when he's left uninterrupted. So if you have Magneto shielding at the front, you have Captain America diving and brawling with their tanks and just aggravating their backline players so that they can't focus on the Punisher, he is left to deal an insane amount of damage. And then for the 5th player, if you pair him with the likes of Rocket, who is one of the best support heroes in the game in my opinion, perfect for damage buffing both the Punisher and the team with his ultimate, as well as being another secondary shield destroyer, means that Strange is completely negated as his main tank ability is using his shield, which becomes pretty useless when you're coming across the likes of Rocket and the Punisher, who can just constantly deal damage and focus on breaking that shield down. And as a Lord Strange myself, who have mained this character for quite a lot, I promise you that these 2 characters do cause you problems and prevent you tanking more effectively. And not to mention that Rocket provides the Punisher with that amazing team-up ability, which gives him infinite ammo for a short period of time and increases his damage output massively, as well as increasing his fire rate. So when diving players jump onto your backline and this team-up ability is placed down, it allows your Punisher to be a lot more effective at clearing out those diving characters such as Spider-Man, or in this case, compared to the first lineup, characters like Black Panther or Magic in the second lineup. Now, as for the 6th and final spot in this lineup, if you've seen my previous 2 videos, you'll know by now that the 6th spot is always interchangeable and will depend on various things, such as the map, the mode, who you've banned, and who the enemy team is using. But for this lineup, as we're trying to use different heroes, I would suggest using Jeff. Now, it can be a controversial decision, of course, as this lineup technically doesn't have a primary healer as such. However, Jeff is one of the best healers in the game, and for various reasons. If you are a good Jeff, you can deal damage, yes, by any means, but as a healer with his unlimited range and those bubbles, allowing him to go underground and place bubbles onto teammates in certain areas, this can allow this team to work really well and make Jeff a great primary healer. Now, as I mentioned, this is obviously controversial, and you can revert to a more primary healing focused character such as maybe Luna or maybe Cloak or Invisible Woman, but seeing as they're on the previous 2 lineups, I was trying to find a healer that was better suited for this lineup that didn't revolve around using the same healers in the previous videos, but also seeing as you're going to have a Punisher that's going to play more backline and ranged and closer to your supports, he shouldn't necessarily be an issue for your teammates to heal him, but also with Captain America and his amazing sustainability, this also means that he shouldn't need healing as much, but then can also just retreat when needed anyway. And really, you're only going to need to focus on Magneto, as he'll be your damage mitigator and your shielder, so he'll be the main focus for heals. And then Rocket, as I mentioned, could deal some damage, but when needed, he can then focus secondary heals on the likes of Scarlet Witch, and then of course Captain America if needed. So as you can see, this is a pretty well balanced roster, giving you a good spread across all of the categories, with Magneto being able to damage mitigate and put his shields up, Captain America being able to dive and brawl, Scarlet Witch being your team executioner, being able to give those final hits, Punisher with his range and versatility with his shotgun at close range and also being able to destroy the shields for Strange, and then also with Rocket being your second support, providing those damage buffs for the entire team and the Punisher, but also being a good shield destroyer as well, and then Jeff being your main healer, but also his great crowd control ability with his ultimate. So just bear that in mind when you're considering your six-man lineup, as this gives you a good spread, as I mentioned, and good variety. However, if you want to tweak the lineup to give you more diving, or if you want to have more damage mitigation, or more heals, then by all means, this is where you then need to adjust it. But with a structured team, you will need to understand this concept and how you execute with this team. As I mentioned, it's very well balanced, but doesn't necessarily have a direct strength, as in doesn't have too much diving or doesn't have too many damage mitigators. So where you feel your team might be lacking in this throughout the game or at the start, you may need to change that depending on these situations. And as well as this, you obviously need to improve your communication. People need to understand when things aren't working or when they are working, that you just need to let your team know that you either change character or you ask another teammate to change based on a certain reason. And for the most part, when you reach those higher ranks, you tend to see players who are able to read between the lines and figure these out based off of the map or the mode on their own experiences and whatnot. And you'll see certain players just change for certain reasons. But if you had a six-man or you were the sixth man going into a squad and you saw this lineup, I promise you that this lineup definitely does work and can definitely counter the number 1 and the number 2 lineups in my previous videos. So as for who to ban and why, you'll need to consider various factors that will be determined by the map and mode, the team structure you have, as you won't always get the perfect lineup, but also who you're playing against and your own personal experience and preferences. Now, at the higher levels, you'll often see the same 4 or 5 or 6 characters get banned, such as Namor, Wolverine, the Hulk, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and so on. However, what you need to figure out for you and your team is who works well with this lineup, i.e. which characters you want, and if you're going to stick to this lineup, then you need to figure out who counters this lineup or causes you the most amount of issues, therefore leaving you with a good game plan, and means you don't have to try and change or adjust your game plan based on the other team. You want them to change their playstyle to suit yours, which means you're in the advantage or the driver's seat as you're leading the way and teams are trying to adjust to you, and then sometimes may lead to you having to change your lineup because you won't always necessarily, and you shouldn't, have the same lineup from the start of the game to the end, as this means that you're probably getting too comfortable and teams will definitely figure you out, and you'll often end up being exposed, or you'll end up getting blindsided, and you'll be stuck in this rhythm of saying, oh, why is it feeling so hard now, or why is this not working anymore? It's because teams tend to change at the highest levels, and that's where you'll struggle more if you don't adjust and rotate throughout the game. Now, as for the adjustments and when you'd make them and why, if Magneto's not working for whatever reason, I would then consider trying to use Thor, which I know he's used in episode 2, but as he's a diving style character who's better at sustaining, needs less heals, and separates the tanks really well, you could then consider using him. However, if you don't need dives, then I would keep Magneto and then change Captain America. And I would change him to a better damage mitigator, such as Strange, but seeing as this video is trying to counter the number 1 lineup and not use those characters, we won't use him or Hulk, and I'll then suggest using either Penny for crowd control and point pressure on the objective, or if you feel you need more sustain and someone that can get away and back and forth, I would then resort to either Venom or maybe even try Groot, which I know he's in the second video as well, but this combo would work really well, seeing as Jeff and Rocket both get the team up with him, so you may want to consider that. Now, of course, you can also then just change the structure or the layout of your team from a 2-2-2 setup to a 1 tank setup if you feel you need more damage for the team, and then you can add in the likes of Wolverine to counter the tanks, as he is literally the tank destroyer. But seeing as he's usually banned, I would then consider using probably Bucky, or the Winter Soldier as he's known as he's a really good hybrid DPS player and would fit into this roster really well with the likes of his team up with Rocket. And of course, with the new Season 1.5 update, you can add in the likes of The Thing as a second tank, as he would work really well, but I'm trying to make a new video that I'm working on at the minute, where you have the likes of all of the Fantastic Four in a squad, so I'm trying to keep him separate from this, but it's worth mentioning. Now, as for Scarlet Witch, if this character isn't working based on the other dives being more effective against her, such as Black Panther or Magic, or maybe her ultimate just isn't as effective because the other Strange is just blocking everything, then consider changing this character to Hela for either more damage, better backline protection, as you can work with your supports closer range to them and isolate those dives, whereas Scarlet is a more medium to close range duelist, and Hela has unreal range, so just consider that. Now, as for Punisher, you can also then just change him as a straight swap for Winter Soldier if you feel the other team is countering his turret via dives, or maybe they have a Spider-Man who's just too much of a problem, or if you want to slow down Thor, then definitely insert Bucky into this lineup. And then as for Rocket, I would definitely keep him in this lineup, seeing as you're going to have Bucky or the Punisher, or even both. It's essential that you have him for the damage buffs and that second support role being perfect for him in this squad. And then finally, as for Jeff, of course, if this character just isn't working and you can't seem to get the good heals that you need, you would consider changing this character to a Luna or a Mantis for better heals if needed, if Jeff just isn't working. But you also may want to consider Warlock for a snipe attack against aerials and other backline players if maybe your Punisher is unable to or is struggling due to the protection from Doctor Strange using his shield. So maybe you want to consider having a sort of sniper in the team. Or if you don't have a Punisher and you're a Winter Soldier, then you definitely may want to consider a Warlock for the ranged attacks as in general. Now, as for the team-ups of all of the named heroes in this list, here's a quick summary of all of the potential link-ups to consider when you're forming your team with based on the adjustments and the initial lineup. So of course, as number 1, you have Magneto and Scarlet Witch. For number 2, you have Punisher and Rocket. For number 3, you have Rocket, Winter Soldier and Punisher. For number 4, you have Jeff, Groot and Rocket. And as for number 5, you get the Thor and Hela. So consider all of these when you're making your squad. And then as for the other characters who are worth shouting out, there's definitely other heroes you can insert into this lineup, such as Spider-Man, Squirrel Girl, Psylocke, Mantis, as well as the new heroes, as I mentioned, both the Thing and the Human Torch, which I've made separate hero guides for on my channel for the new heroes that have just come out with the new season. But I'm planning on making another video for using the Fantastic Four in a full team episode, so look out for that and stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and let me know down below if you have any suggestions or any alterations that you'd make to this current lineup. I'm VisionSGen, and I'll see you in the next one.